Obama was president up to and beyond.
And this may come as a surprise, but the Kremlin is denying any involvement. On a conference call with journalists yesterday, Putin's spokesman said there is no proof that Moscow interfered in the election. And the president was tweeting again, saying this time that the last administration should have done more when the interference began in 2014. Quote, Obama was president up to and beyond the 2016 election. So why didn't he do something about Russia meddling? This, as several secretaries of state and cybersecurity officials met in Washington to discuss the Russian meddling.
That was $1 million a month operation. So that gives me an idea of the resources that we're working against.
The biggest threat seems to be from the American public believing the many false stories that were told out there during the last election.
The officials are gathering at a meeting of the National Organization of Secretaries of State, many from the 21 states believed to have been targeted by the Russians, and they are frustrated by the lack of federal information being shared with them about threats to their systems, some even suggesting the answer lies in returning to paper ballots. But Georgia's Secretary of State Brian Kemp reminding us what that could entail, that infamous hanging Chad.
The fraud we see in Georgia is with paper ballots. So I would be very careful going back to the old days of the hanging Chad.
Now, Homeland Security officials acknowledge a critical need for federal help and said it's their #1 goal to make sure states get the support they need. But it's a reminder, Todd, the next elections are just weeks away. Right. Texas primary March 6th, and then that special election in Pennsylvania just after that.
Great point, Griff. I always love the Russian reaction. They're like the guy in Casablanca. We're shocked that there's gambling here every single time. Griff, thank you. Senate hopeful Mitt Romney getting a huge endorsement from Washington. President Trump tweeting his support, saying he will make a great senator and worthy successor to Orrin Hatch and has my full support and endorsement. Romney responding, quote, thank you, Mr. President, for the support. I hope that over the course of the campaign, I also earn the support and endorsement of the people of Utah. Romney, as you recall, was critical of the president during the 2016 election, calling him a phony and a fraud. New concerns that North Korea could be planning to blackmail the U.S. out of billions of dollars. Senior national security officers privately worry that once the rogue nation becomes capable of striking our territories, they could try to extort Washington.
We have a range of possible things that North Korea could demand, everything from enormous financial payoffs. North Korea feels that it is entitled to reparations for everything from the losses it suffered during the Korean War through the sanctions that have been imposed upon North Korea since 1953.
President Trump has insisted he would not let that happen. Let's go to sports now. U.S. men's hockey team staying alive in their quest for an Olympic gold medal. They advanced to the quarterfinals against the Czech Republic after beating Slovakia 5-1. But get this. The North Korean team desperately trying to win a medal in anything. They have yet to place in a single event at the Winter Games, which could land them in the rogue nation's gulags. That's not cool. Kim Jong-un's family allegedly sentenced the losers of the 1966 World Cup to concentration camps for their loss. Aren't we lucky to live here? Today, President Trump will honor 12 of America's finest with the Public Safety Medal of Valor. Among the recipients, first responders to the San Bernardino terror attack. Chief Doug Schroeder also being honored for ending a workplace shooters rampage in Kansas. This year's honorees were scheduled to receive the awards last year, but instead they went to officers who responded to the congressional baseball shooting. Time now, 9 minutes after the hour. The Supreme Court back in session today and could decide to take up DACA. Our next guest breaks down what swift action from the High Court could mean for the Trump administration.
And bright stars through the
And Fergie now breaking her silence to explain the national anthem performance on Sunday. As the March 5th deadline looms for a deal on DACA, the Supreme Court may step in as soon as today and decide the appeal of President Trump's executive order. So what could their decision mean for the president and Congress moving forward? Here now to weigh in is the legal affairs reporter for the Washington Times, Alex Sawyer. Alex, thanks so much for being here. And first, before we get into Congress and the president, let's do a little law school 101. What are the arguments for and against the Supreme Court taking this up?
So exactly what happened is very rare. The Trump administration has appealed directly to the Supreme Court after a district court judge issued an injunction basically saying that it could not roll back the DACA program. And so usually what happens is something like that would go to a circuit court, and in this case it's the Ninth Circuit. And so before the Ninth Circuit has ruled, the Trump administration is asking the justices to step in and basically they haven't asked for a stay of the injunction, but they're asking them to take the case and issue a decision. Okay, and obviously this is unique because they're basically skipping a level for the person at home who doesn't understand the whole circuit court, judicial, all that stuff. Okay, so what does this mean for the president? So essentially, it's very interesting because there's an injunction in place issued by the federal court out in California. There's also recently one from a Brooklyn court. The one from the California court is actually the one that issued at the Supreme Court right now. But for the president, really, nothing will happen until the either circuit court, Ninth Circuit, or the Supreme Court decide to take the case, and then that's when his argument would really become, relevant. Because at this point, with two injunctions issued by district courts, it's likely no DACA issue right now. It's rolling the same way it was with President Obama. There's nothing that President Trump has done that's being implemented at the point. So he really does need either a favorable ruling from the Ninth Circuit or the Supreme Court to take his case. They conferenced on Friday. We did not hear if they were going to take it Friday night. Today, this morning, around 9:30, 10 o'clock is when orders come out. And so a lot of people are suspecting that we might hear from the justices then. If they do take the case, it would be on the docket for this term, meaning that they would hear it and decide it by June. Now, a lot of people say, a lot of experts I've talked to say that that's very unlikely because of, where we are in the term at one point. And also these expedited appeals, like you said, skipping a level is very rare. I think it's only been granted about a handful of times in 70 years. And usually there has to be an issue of public importance, imminent public importance. And so in this case, with two injunctions, there's not really any harm. The DACA program is rolling the same way it was before. So I don't know if it's likely they're going to take it, but the longer we don't hear from the justices, the more likely it is they are not. Right, and keeping in mind that March 5th, quote-unquote, deadline, it's not the most hard and fast deadline that we've ever seen in life, if you know what I mean. Let's go to what this means for Congress, because as you remember from civics class, we have three branches of government. Congress makes the laws. Right, exactly. And so what's very interesting is I've talked to court watchers who say really the justices don't pay attention to what Congress is doing and vice versa. They are separate entities and they will go on about themselves. Now, of course, if the Supreme Court were to decide to take the case and then Congress does, reach a deal, we have Schumer and McConnell getting together, coming up with something that President Trump agrees with and would sign, then that could make the case moot and then the justices wouldn't hear it. But in terms of deciding whether or not to take the case, that what Congress is doing really won't weigh as a factor for the justices. And we seemed somewhat close at the beginning of last week on the DACA issue. Then by the end, both the fact that Congress didn't do what we thought they were going to do, and of course the specter of gun control all over that made it really tough. And it's going to be interesting to see what ultimately happens with DACA. Alex Sawyer, thanks so much. Great insight. Time now, 17 minutes after the hour. A brand new study offering new hope in preventing autism. Cleaning products more dangerous than cigarettes. And, yep, the true benefits of booze. Dr. Nicole Saphier here to break down your health headlines. That's coming up next. And the backlash for Joy Behar's controversial comments not over quite yet.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you. That's different. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct. I'm hearing voices.
The avalanche of complaints ABC is now dealing with. could be one of the biggest breakthroughs in diagnosing autism. Scientists say they've taken the first steps toward groundbreaking new tests that could lead to earlier detection. So, what do parents need to know? Joining me now, Dr. Nicole Saphier. And this is fascinating and I think just amazing news for so many families out there.
Good morning, Todd. This is extremely exciting. I'm very happy about this. It's a small study that came out of the UK recently, but what they're showing is that there's potentially going to be a blood and urine test for detecting autism. It's far down the road, but why this is important is because autism presents with a wide array of behavioral symptoms, and it really has to be, someone has to suspect that someone has autism, and then they have to undergo a series of behavioral tests. There's nothing definitive, nothing concrete or objective saying someone has autism, someone doesn't. So this study is extremely exciting in the sense that maybe we're going to be able to diagnose earlier, intervene earlier, and potentially give these children and their families a better quality of life.
Because currently, you almost need to wait for the child to do quote-unquote normal child things that they would be doing at a certain stage of development before you can figure it out. Because quite frankly, when a baby comes out, they're not doing much.
Exactly. And pediatricians are in tune for the most part. They're watching for signs of this, and a lot of parents obviously know their children. But unfortunately, a lot of times it's a delayed diagnosis because perhaps behavioral issues in school. And with potentially a test, you might be able to diagnose it earlier.
Fascinating. This is great stuff. Great news there. This not so great news because I like to clean. A really, really freaky study out now on how products in your house that you're using to clean, if you use them enough, it can be like smoking 20 cigarettes a day.
Well, undoubtedly, we know tobacco causes cancer and lung disease. And a lot of studies have already told us that the chemicals in cleaning properties are harmful for your lungs. This study in particular has looked at the long-term effects of it, and they are saying it's equivalent to about 20 cigarettes a day for 10 to 20 years. And but these are really limited to people specifically in the cleaning industries or even people who are using cleaning products at home on a daily basis. I mean, think about it though. You have irritant chemicals and you're inhaling them, and what it does is it disrupts your mucous membranes and it just causes remodeling of those cells, causes long-term consequences. So for the most part, you can use a microfiber rag, and it's with water and maybe a little bit of vinegar, and that should be enough. You don't necessarily need those harsh chemicals unless you're trying to disinfect. If you need the harsh chemicals, consider using gloves and a mask.
What was interesting about that as well, men didn't seem to be as affected, which is just kind of random.
They did admit there was bias in there because there weren't a lot of men in their population sample.
All right, let's switch to something positive now. You're saying I can go booze immediately after the show because it's healthy.
Well, so an apple a day may keep the doctor away, but it's possible a glass of wine or a beer every now and then may make you live longer. And this one study, which is a great study out of California, long-term effects of why people are living longer. They looked at a bunch of people 90 and above and said, what have you done? And one of the things are they had 1 to 2 glasses of wine or beer a day, and that showed about an 18% increased chance of survival of living longer. And there's other things in that as well. They said if you have a hobby more than 2 hours a day, that's actually increased risk or increased longevity. But one of the things with alcohol, we know that beer with high hops is good for bone health. We also know there are antioxidants in white wine, and then there's also clot-busting effects in red wine, decreased risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. So 1 to 2 glasses of something a day, that might actually be pretty good for you, but anything more than that, and it's not good for you.
Notice I couldn't get you to say I could drink right after the show, but you always hear these studies, or you see like lady, like 110 years old, she died at 110. What was her secret? She had like 2 glasses of wine with dinner every night.
Well, they say you keep your stress levels low, and for some people that does ease some tension.
Dr. Saphier, is always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Great insight. All right, time now, 25 minutes after the hour. The idea of Russian meddling in American elections was once mocked by former President Obama. Take a listen.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
And President Trump now demanding to know why his predecessor stayed silent. Ready, set, activist? One Hollywood star taking a break to fix democracy? Carly Shimkus, she's not taking a break. She's here next with the online outrage when we come back. Welcome back. President Trump blaming the Obama administration for not doing enough to prevent Russian election interference. Our commander-in-chief tweeting, quote, Obama was president up to and beyond the 2016 election, so why didn't he do something about Russian meddling? Dozens of federal secretaries trying to figure out how to stop the problem as the Mueller indictment gives us an inside look into Putin's playbook.
That was $1 million a month operation. So that gives me an idea of the resources that we're working against.
The biggest threat seems to be from the American public believing the many false stories that were told out there during the last election.
Concerns also coming from several states, including Georgia, which want to bring back paper ballots to avoid any outside interference.
The fraud we see in Georgia is with paper ballots. So I would be very careful going back to the old days of the hanging Chad.
As you recall, this isn't the first time former President Obama has brushed off warnings about Russia as a major cyber threat. Take a listen.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. The 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
That was the former president mocking his Republican opponent, Mitt Romney, in the 2012 election, calling the Kremlin America's #1 geopolitical foe. Washington Times columnist Tammy Bruce says the refusal to acknowledge that then has given Russia just enough time to wreak havoc on the U.S. now.
He did more than just stay silent. In October, he was at a press conference and was asked about this. He actually told Donald Trump to stop whining, said that no serious person would consider this an even remote possibility that anyone could affect the American elections because they're so dispersed. He mocked and chastised people who were warning about it. And it started actually back in 2012 when he mocked Mitt Romney for saying exactly the same thing. The Democrats, the media, and liberals rode on those coattails, moved this notion of that the election was not valid, the divisions between Americans, Michael Moore, the March on Washington, this is not my president, this is a fraud, the attempts to nullify done by actors here, legitimate American actors here, using that kind of rhetoric is what the president was alluding to.
So we want to know, why do you think President Obama stayed silent on Russian election meddling? Email us or share us your comments on the Fox and Friends First Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages. We will share them later on in the show. A group of teenage anti-gun protesters staging a lie-in outside the White House. 17 members of the group Teens for Gun Reform laying on the ground to symbolize each person killed in last week's Florida shooting. Dozens more quickly joining them. The group behind the event says their goal is to send a message to the government to pass tougher gun laws. 2 New York State troopers given a heartwarming gift in the face of the Parkland tragedy. NBC News reports Jordana Judson was trying to go to the funeral of her friend Meadow Pollock and was told a one-way ticket would cost $700. Well, troopers Robert Troy and Thomas Karazinski saw her sobbing at LaGuardia when they decided to step in and pull out their credit cards to pay for that ticket. They say it was the right thing to do. Great story out of a horrible situation. More and more Americans are supporting President Trump's tax bill. A New York Times poll reporting 51% of Americans now approve of the tax law. That's up from 46% last month and 37% when it passed in December. President Trump tweeting about the tax plan's successes overnight, saying in part, the U.S. economy is looking very good, in my opinion, even better than anticipated, and regulations and taxes have been massively cut. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Fergie breaking her silence over her botched, jazzed-up rendition of the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game after it took the internet by storm.
Oh, say, does that star spangled banner yet wave?
You couldn't hear it, but Shimkus just recoiled in the corner of our studio here. The 42-year-old singer telling TMZ, quote, I've always been honored and proud to perform the national anthem, and last night I wanted to try something special for the NBA. I'm a risk taker artistically, but clearly this rendition didn't strike the intended tone. I love this country and honestly tried my best. You know what I say? Let's give Fergie a break. Wasn't great. We don't always perform great when we need to, but give her an A+ for effort. All right, the scathing note left on an ambulance, sending sparks flying on social media as an iconic actor fires back on Twitter at his own death hoax. Sylvester Stallone is alive and punching. But first, Jennifer Lawrence taking a break from acting to fix our democracy. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7. Sirius XM 115 is here with what is trending this morning. Good morning, Carly.
That's right. Good morning, Todd. Well, Jennifer Lawrence is currently on a press tour for her upcoming movie called Red Sparrow, which is due out next month. But she recently revealed that she's going to be taking some time away from the spotlight. Take a listen.
I'm going to be working with this organization I'm a part of, Represent Us, trying to get, young people engaged politically, on a local level.
That's awesome.
It doesn't have anything to do with partisans. It's just anti-corruption stuff, trying to pass state-by-state laws that can help prevent corruption, fix our democracy.
Well, those that don't take too kindly to Hollywood folks getting involved in politics are now tweeting things like this. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro says she thinks Hunger Games is a documentary, doesn't she? And Matthew on social media also says, so glad we have Hollywood celebrities like Jennifer Lawrence to come to our rescue. What would us common folk do without them? And Alex chimes in saying, they are smarter than us. Didn't you know? They are famous. Now, what some of those people may not have heard is that she is working for a nonpartisan anti-corruption organization, so something that benefits both parties.
Potentially benefits. This one is, it's funny when you first think of it, but then it's actually not funny because it could have serious ramifications. Sylvester Stallone death hoax.
Yeah, that's right. As Sylvester Stallone was forced to deny rumors of his own death after things like this started to widely circulate on social media. Sylvester Gardenzio Stallone died early this morning after his battle with prostate cancer. The actor kept his illness a secret, but in the end couldn't beat it. Well, those rumors began to, spread so widely that he actually responded saying, please ignore this stupidity, alive and well, and still punching. So his brother also chimed in. That's his tweet that you see right there. Younger brother Frank Stallone also says, I'm very protective of my older brother, and I don't find any humor in this fake post today on my brother's demise. It upset my 96-year-old mother, so I'm doubly upset. I just don't understand what makes these sick-minded people tick. So he is alive. He says he's alive and well. And the person who started that rumor has way too much time on his hands.
Yeah, I mean, the serious consequences, that 96-year-old mother could have had a serious health incident.
It's horrible.
All right, this one's horrible. Woman arrested after leaving a vile note on a parked ambulance. This woman...
That's right. This woman was arrested after she left this note saying, if this van is for anyone but number 14, then you have no right to be parked here. I couldn't give a bleep if the whole street collapsed. Now move your van from outside my house. Well, Katie Tudor, who is a paramedic, posted a photo of that note on social media saying, so upset to be sent this by one of our crews this morning. Along with this note left on their ambulance, they received a load of verbal abuse. Well, that woman was arrested on suspicion of public order offenses. So moral of the story, don't mess with paramedics because they are very important. So that woman clearly having a bad day.
Of course, and another great message. Way to catch that bleep right there. You and I could have had our Justin Timberlake Jackson moment.
Thank you.
Janet Jackson
Quick
moment.
reflexes on
Nicely
the fly.
done. All right, time now 38 minutes after the hour. Thank you, Carly. Deadly dog food, an urgent warning for all pet owners. What you need to know to keep your furry friend safe. All right, white imagination, white property, even white speech, the controversial curriculum being taught at one of our country's top universities. And I like this one. Why didn't the chicken cross the road? Well, apparently there weren't enough of them. The crucial missing ingredient that shut down hundreds of KFCs. It's kind of important.
Cold beer on a Friday night, a pair of jeans that fit just right, and the radio. I like to see the sunrise, see the love in my woman's eye, feel the touch of a
41 minutes after the hour now, the state of Pennsylvania issuing a new overhauled congressional map ahead of key 2018 races. The Democratic majority state Supreme Court approving the map in a 4-3 decision to replace a 6-year-old Republican-drawn map accused of being gerrymandered. The new map will take effect for the May 15th primary. Republicans are vowing to challenge it in federal court as soon as today. All right, get this. Yale University now offering a course to help students understand and counteract whiteness. The English course is called Construction of Whiteness, according to the syllabus obtained by the College Fix. It will explore topics ranging from white masculinity to white speech and white spaces. The course aims to allow students to construct counter-narratives using plays, poems, and memoirs. Have at it, Yale. Pet owners beware of a brand new recall of a potentially deadly dog food. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network Fox Business here with what you need to know. Tracy, this is pretty scary.
This is very scary, Todd. Several major dog food brands owned by J.M. Smucker being recalled because they have small amounts of a euthanasia drug inside the dog food. So here are some of the brands. We've got Gravy Train, Kibbles and Bits, Skippy products. So these are pretty well known and wide sold. So if you do have one of these, throw it out. The FDA says it's unlikely that your dog would get sick from eating this, but why take any chances?
Yeah, why take the chance? And from dog food to human food, at least the kind that I like, Krispy Kreme launching a new gold donut.
Yes, getting in the spirit of the Olympics, I guess, a gold medal winning donut. So they're launching this today, available for a limited time, and it's a glazed donut with some pieces of Hershey's new candy bar. That's the gold candy bar that you can see on your screen there with the salted caramel icing. Sounds delicious to me. Salty and sweet treat. So again, available today, limited time at participating Krispy Kreme.
It truly is an amazing combination when you
Yes.
combine salty and sweet. Spectacular. Tracy Carrasco, thanks so very much.
Thank you.
Time now, 44 minutes after the hour. Philadelphia already approved injection sites for addicts. Now it wants to decriminalize marijuana. So will the progressive policy work, or is it just plain insane? We debate that next. And Google taking us one step closer to driverless taxis, where you can soon hitch a ride. Coming up next.